Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Nick Tarbitt. I'm a lawyer with CMLG and director at a very small indie label called Integrity Records. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of us all and the team at A to D and at Sound Gallery Studios to the second panel discussion today. This one is entitled Making Your Way in the Music Industry. As you know from the programme, the Sound Gallery team have assembled some great panellists for you today. The other two panels are aimed more at the technical side of music and music production, whereas the panellists we have for you today for this particular panel are more involved in the creative and in the business side of the music industry. We're not here to give you a lecture or a seminar. You don't need that, and we don't need that. These guys are here for you to pick their brains, to get some gems, some nuggets from them, and perhaps learn something from their experience of making their way in the music industry in their different guises, to help you or help those whom you're advising or working with make their way in the music industry. I pinched a supposedly funny but frighteningly true quote from a promoter's Facebook page just a couple of days ago, which really seemed to sum up the current position, and I'm going to crib it in its entirety. And it was called Being a Musician. Some of you may have seen it. Being a musician today, it said, means composing, writing, playing, singing, arranging, recording, producing, mixing, mastering, videoing, uploading, registering, designing, promoting, booking, performing, blogging, messaging, and filling in tax returns. And all you really wanted was some sex. It really is a vast industry and I think an increasingly difficult industry in which to succeed. And we hope in the short time that we've been given to sit in front of you today to help you even a little bit make your way within that difficult industry. We've got about a 50-minute slot under the revised timetabling today, and then after a quick caffeine or beer break, we'll be up on the first floor in either zone 3 or 4, it's in the programmes, where those of you who don't have a chance to ask us a question during this session here, please feel free to come up and say hello and share your experiences with us and ask us any questions that perhaps haven't been raised or haven't been dealt with today. I'd like just very briefly to explain and introduce who we've got here. Myself, you know. To my left immediately is Lee FLETCHER, a producer, arranger, songwriter from UNSUNG Productions, also done some significant mastering and engineering work, and also independent filmmaking. Emma Scott, on the end of our table here, is a radio presenter many of you will be familiar with. She also has a significant pedigree in presenting, I should say promoting rock gigs under the Emma Scott Presents band and banner. And she is the author of a book on breaking your bands, getting your band on the radio. So that's certainly an area that some of you may want to pick her brains on. On the next table, we've got Paul Gray, who many of you will know as being a regional director of the Musicians Union, but also those of us who are a little bit older than some of you from being the bassist in the Damned and Eddie and the Hot Rods. And then at the far end, you have Villa Leppenham from the Animal Farm, a broad music production company in London. Villa and his team, he was a signed artist for some years and toured the world as an artist himself before moving into record production. And he now heads up the Animal Farm team. and they're involved right across the range of the industry, from producing, technical producing, through to booking, artist management, label work, and the like. So Villa has a broad range of experience, which again, I hope you'll enjoy his sharing with you, and we'll find some questions for him. As I say, we have got a shorter period now. I've said enough. I don't know whether anyone's brave enough to want to put up their hand and ask the first question, or shall we start off and get your response to one of ours? Is there anyone there who wants to start the ball rolling? Okay, that's me then. So, I wonder whether, bearing in mind just how ubiquitous the internet is and how we simply can't get away, like it or not, from social media and the internet, one of the things we have been discussing briefly before coming up before you today is the idea of profile building and the importance of building a fan base, the importance of social media. Certainly for my part, one of the guys I worked with on the label side rather than the legal side was a guy called Frank Turner, who was the lead singer in Million Dead, a band that I was fortunate enough to do their first album. And Frank and Julia from the band, from day one, were always available on their merch table. Whether they were playing to 10 people or, in those days, a big crowd of 100 people, they would always be out before the show, they'd always be out after the show. And it was very clear that that was an important part of making music and being in a band. A very important part of that to them was actually being there with an audience, with a fan base, rather than being distant from it. And those of you who know his history, when Frank went solo, he would play anywhere. He went out with his acoustic guitar and he posted on the internet, and he meant it. If you want me to come and play your house party, as long as you can provide me a couple of beers and a couch to sleep on, I'll come on the train and I'll do it. And he did. And as some of you will know, last Friday, he sold out Wembley Arena as a headline artist. And so certainly what the industry might call fan engagement, which is a really horrible phrase, to me, it's common sense. If you want people to come to your gigs and you want people to buy your records, then you need to engage with them. And I think someone like Frank is a great example for those of you out there that it can actually pay off. I wonder, start immediately with Lee. What thoughts have you got on that particular issue?
Well, it almost sounds like you've been looking at my notes, because that's pretty much what I was going to say. It's about engagement. I mean, I think probably most people here know this. It's about building a tribe and actually use, what was the phrase you used from record companies? Fan engagement. Yeah. Like you see, which sounds horrible, as you say, but real life engagement. I know quite a lot of people who pretty much are available 24 hours a day, it seems, on social media, which, you know, seems like quite a big price to pay, but they've actually managed, without any traditional record company structure, to gain a very large audience and literally come from playing in people's living rooms, doing streaming gigs online, to actually playing large venues, getting decent media coverage in the mainstream press and so on, just from the very same kind of route that you're talking about. I think probably the best advice I could give is whilst everybody's telling people to be available on social media sites and engage with your fans, there's a danger. Some people misinterpret this and just become a nuisance and start spamming people. And I see this a lot. People who are obviously very keen to get their message across, but do it in the wrong way, in an almost aggressive and annoying way, which turns people off. The people I know who have done this successfully, I mean, to some extent I use it, but because I'm slightly more behind the scenes in producer mode, I don't do it to the extent that some of the artists I know do. But those that do it successfully build a real, genuine relationship with people online. It's not a case of buy this, listen to this, look at this, buy this, download this. You know, that's important, but it's really just getting to know your fan base and building a tribe, really. Because, you know, these days, if you're working as an independent artist, which more and more of us are, you can, and this is the subject we'll probably come on to, make a reasonable living, if your aspirations aren't too high money-wise, as long as you have a fairly tight tribe. And, you know, that requires work.
Emma, some of the bands you promote and indeed more recently have signed to your label, I mean, do you find that they're good at getting to grips with the social media and engaging with their audience? Do you have to crack the whip a bit to get that to happen?
They need pushing every step of the way, but there are some bands that you know are going to be out and about talking to the fans, actually outside the venue before the gig starts, saying hi. They know them all by their first name, and they'll be signing things, and you know that they're going to do well. They're going to sell a lot of tickets, and you know they're going to be on Twitter posting funny photos and on their Facebook pages and everything, and building their audience like that. And you look at their Facebook fans, it's like 6,000 fans and 8,000 are talking about it. And you're like, how's that possible? But that's because they're out shaking hands and signing things, signing boobs and faces, and you know, you can see some of them. I don't know what's going on, but some of the bands do not quite get it as much as others, and they all sit in the dressing room all the time, just drinking everyone else's rider, which obviously they love, but that's not really shaking hands or touching people, or you know, building the brand or the audience or the potential people that are going to buy their album. But we've got one of our bands, and they were useless at Facebook. They would always be on their own personal Facebook pages, the 4 members of the band. And as a label and promoter of the gigs and everything, I was like, why aren't you on the band page? Why aren't you doing that? You need to do this. And I literally wrote them a massive essay. And I said, look, I'm sorry, I sound like I'm your mother here telling you off, but you really need to get people talking about you. And they did exactly what I said. And it was just silly things like putting pictures, like, I think, you know, a pint of beer, lunchtime drinking, I'll have a bit of that. And then they'd have a pint of beer, and then it would be, another picture would be the empty glass, and then they'd have another one. And it was just stupid banter like that, you know, talking about beer or talking about boobs or something. You know, just anything fun that was going on in their lives. Instead of putting it on their own Facebook pages, they put it on their band page, and they went from 22 people talking about them to 200 people in about 5 days, which was very good. And that's only going to keep going and going and going the more they get on there. And it's really just simple stuff. And just if somebody comments on your page, if you reply to them, they'll love it, and then they'll have a conversation, and it will appear on their page, and that's how you get more fans. And it's not that hard to do. It's quite fun, really.
I mean, if I could just quickly add to something you just said there, really what people like on social networking is the stupid stuff. You know, we know if we put up a serious post about something, it might get 1 like, you know, from your wife or something. But then you put up a picture of a kitten with a hat on, and everybody likes it. Everybody comments on it. So if you can kind of take that kind of feeling and apply it to your business updates, then you're much more likely to get some interaction, because people like fun, really.
Yeah, and pictures of cats.
And pictures of cats.
Pints of beer.
And beer.
Yeah, they love it. It's good.
Paul, obviously, when you were gigging, you guys back in the day didn't have the advantage or disadvantage, what some people might say, of this whole your life exposed via social media feeds. But
yeah, it was exposed by journalists instead.
Yes.
You forgot adding a mechanic to your first list, by the way.
Yeah.
The amount of times a van broke down, blimey.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays it's kind of, I mean, it's very punk in a way, because, you know, nowadays everybody's really got to take control of everything, and musicians are very good at being creative musically. And, you know, I mean, all we really want to do is get on the stage, play our songs and write songs and get paid and maybe have sex. But, you know, it's called the music business, and there's kind of big fat lines on that word business. And nowadays you have got to do everything. And as Lee said, it's kind of 360 degrees. And the simplest way for anybody, really, I think you kind of probably all know how to do it, except it's kind of overwhelming. There's so many choices. Because everybody's trying to do it, the traditional kind of gatekeepers have pretty much gone. I mean, they're still there, but they're more redundant than they used to be, the A&R and the journalists. People kind of hear stuff through recommendations and kind of going through YouTube and all that and Spotify, which is fantastic. But it is overwhelming, and I think in a way it's almost kind of too much. You've got too many choices. There's a really good news feed I can recommend called Hypebot. And I kind of get it every day, and it's like a digest of all the kind of the latest trends in social networking around the music industry for musicians. I think it's kind of American-based, but there's lots of really, really good links in there. And it's very much up to date what other bands are doing, what other artists are doing, how they're getting funded, how they're getting promoted, how they're getting new audiences in. And the way things are going, if we came back in a month's time, we'd probably be talking about different stuff. Everything changes so quickly. But it all starts with a song, we were kind of saying informally earlier. It still all starts with a song. And you've got to have the music that people want before you can kind of sell a relationship. And it is now more about selling relationships than selling, you know, a piece of vinyl or a CD or a download. It's about that whole kind of holistic, what am I doing, taking pictures backstage in the van on the way to gigs, you know, of your little fluffy cat, all that kind of stuff, just to engage people. And the sort of stuff that you like looking at on Facebook and YouTube, that's the sort of stuff that you should be putting on your websites. If you like it, then it's kind of like pretty obvious that other people can like it.
Yeah.
I mean, you touched there, Paul, on one of the other topics that we wondered about discussing, which was a question posed of me recently, asking whether bloggers are the new A&Rs, and you talked about the gatekeepers and those who write. I mean, I don't know here whether, perhaps a show of hands, those who read a music blog regularly. Yeah, a few. I mean, yeah, likewise. Have we got any bloggers here in the audience, or any of you writing music blogs? Interesting. Yeah. I mean, Villa, on that point, I mean, do you, when you're looking perhaps at whether to work with a new band or a new artist who comes to you at Animal Farm, is that are the bloggers, the music bloggers, those whose opinions you take into account, or do you see whether there is a buzz on the blogs about a particular band or artist before deciding whether to work with them?
No, I really don't care.
No.
If I like something, I'll work with it, and if I don't like it, I don't give a shit about how many Facebook fans anyone has. It's
Fantastic.
Completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
The job of an artist is to create art, and that's why most of us went into the music business. I certainly did, to make music. And if the only way that you can get people to like you on Facebook is by talking about a dog that picks its butt with its nose, you're in the wrong business. You know, it's cool. And you know, like 20 odd years ago when I got into it myself, that we didn't have any of those tools either. And I love it. I'm on Twitter and Hypebot. It's a great site, and Facebook and everything else, and they're all really, really nice things. But let's not forget, the business is based on songs and records. If you haven't got those, there's no business. What do you want to ask?
No, it's not working.
Is this on? Yeah. Can I just play devil's advocate a little bit and take things back a step? There's been an inherent assumption from some of the comments that this is all about starting with live performance. And my question, which as I say is a little bit devil's advocate, is actually with social media, with the internet, with networking per se, is the default starting position these days live performance? I'm thinking of people maybe like Daniel Bedingfield. Now, I don't know his entire musical history, but my impression was that actually he just produced himself and put himself out there through the net and didn't actually, I didn't get the sense anyway, that he relied on building up a fan base through actual live performance. So my question is, these days, is live performance the core? Is that the default starting position, do you think? Is that what you have to get right first? Or is it possible to actually promote yourself and make music and become established through social media, through the internet, through networking?
I think so. I do, actually, despite everything that I've just said. I don't perform live, okay? So I am a musician, but I work more in the production mode, so I tend to, not appear on stage. And I've managed to do it to some extent. A lot of the artists that I'm working with, even though they are very competent musicians, they're not necessarily out there gigging in town halls and so forth. So I think it is possible. I mean, despite my comments about cats and you know, making things funny, I mean, for me, it is still very much about, without wishing to sound po-faced, it's about the art, you know. And if you've actually, something else that we may come on to, I wanted to make the point that for me, unless you've actually got something to say musically, you shouldn't be doing it anyway. It's just these tools are there, and we have to work within, to some extent, with the tools that society has presented us. But so yes, in short, I think you can. I think it just depends what you want to achieve. If ultimately your music, particularly if you're in a band, if its genesis is in live performance, then I still think there's a very strong validity in actually going out and paying your dues and building a live audience in that way. But individuals can work.
I once listened to a panel where this guy, I forget his name now, he managed a lot of the big boy bands of the 90s, American ones, like Backstreet Boys and what's the other one? NSYNC.
Yeah.
I forget his name now. He's a crook, big fat American guy who then got sent to prison for tax evasion or something. But he had a good point. He said that there's 5 things that will sort of guarantee success. It was great songs, great recordings of those songs, a great live show, a great image, and a great story to tell. And then he went on to talk about all that stuff, and I thought, okay, well, you know, I'm a punk rocker by heart, you know, in my heart. He's talking about boy bands, and we're dealing with real musicians here, so what does he know, you know? And as soon as I left that and, you know, had my shot of tequila to sharpen the senses, I realized that he's speaking the truth. That it doesn't matter. It's any artist ever who's ever been successful has had all those 5 things. And all of them have to work at the same time. So whether you start with the live, if you're great live, but if your recordings suck or your songs suck, it doesn't work. So, and the way to do it is to give it time. And I think to develop it is to give it time. And I think a lot of people are very impatient in developing these things. And they think, oh, well, you know, we've done 5 gigs already. Come on, man, where's the support slot? And of course, you'd be terrible on a big stage. And I remember, like, just from personal experience, we'd done 2-3 years worth of playing pubs and clubs. And then we got our first shot at playing on a big stage, which was the Shepherd's Bush Empire. And I was petrified, because all of a sudden, I couldn't even hear anything. You know, you can't even hear. The monitoring was so weird that I was singing out of tune. I couldn't hear anything on stage. So how, you know, and that was after 3 years of playing in clubs. So how are you going to do it after 5 shows at the local Frog and Radiator? And where does the expectation come from? You know, if you write songs, you have to remember that most of the successful songwriters in the world, they'll do like 100 songs a year. And out of those, they'll have 1 hit, maybe get 5 cuts. So just because you've got a set full of songs doesn't mean that there's an album there. You know, hopefully there is, but so give it time is what I'd say, and work on all the things at the same time. And resist using a bigger megaphone.
Paul, I wonder if I could ask you to follow on from that with something that I think we all see as a real evil, the pay-to-play gigs, and how young bands, how new bands, emerging bands can actually afford to earn their spurs, to play more than those 5 shows that Veal rightly points out as being insufficient. I mean, I wonder whether you've got some thoughts on that.
Firstly, to answer your question, there's no right way. You know, the MU have got 30,000 members and everybody does it differently. And it's about finding your own place. It's about, because we make music because we love doing it. That's why we started doing it. If we're successful, it's almost a bonus. So if you're doing what you love doing and other people like it, that's already a success as far as I'm concerned. If you can try and monetize that and make it into a job, even better. And these days it's very, very different, incredibly different. And live income, once you actually get over and above the thing I'll talk about in a minute, is kind of where the money is, because it's not just a live income, but it's a merchandise. I was on some panel thing a couple of years back with the bloke who manages U2, and he said, I'm not managing a rock band anymore. I'm managing a merchandise operation that happens to have a recording contract. Now, if you look at T-shirts, you know, you flog a T-shirt for 15 quid, and that's going to cost you £1. How much are you selling your music for? If it's being sold and not, you know, ripped for free, it's very, very big kind of differential. So if you can play live and you're a great live act, then that is going to kind of really kind of help you to earn a living as a musician. It's very, very difficult nowadays. To come on to your point, pay-to-play is kind of often, well, it's always been there, but it's been there in different guises. A lot of the festivals require you, and a lot of these competitions, and there's some pretty awful competitions around, where you have to sell X amount of tickets before you kind of get in the first heat, and each heat you've got to sell more and more tickets. And I've never really known a band that's got any degree of success about that. It's made the organiser a lot of money. It's probably a bit wrong to make sweeping statements, but that's about as sweeping as I can get. What I'd say is that you should never really do anything for free unless you want to. You wouldn't expect a plumber to come round and spend 3 hours working in your house and say, it's free. Or go to Tesco's and get your weekly shop, or take your car in for a service and say it's all free. But that's what musicians are kind of doing more and more and more. If you want to do that, fantastic, but it shouldn't be the default position. So what we're quite keen on doing now, in fact, we're launching a new kind of pay-to-play leaflet at Sound City up in Liverpool next month. I don't know what's the next, I've not seen it yet, but the MU have been working very closely with lots of promoters around the country, lots of clubs, to make it kind of more fair and equitable for everybody, because it's not just the musicians and stuff, it's promoters as well. And it's difficult for anybody to really kind of, it's got to be fair. Everything that we do has really got to be fair to everybody. There's no point having anything weighed one side more than the other, because that's never a good way to start off any relationship, whether it's music, work, you know, whatever. So what we're kind of looking at doing now is suggesting perhaps deals where you go on a 50-50 split with the promoters, so that you both stand a chance of making some money, but you've both got to work for it. And from the kind of cases that I see in my day job with the MU, which is a lot of kind of issues around, well, I thought this was going to happen, and they thought this was going to happen. Well, where's the bit in writing that says you thought this? Oh, we didn't get it in writing. And whereas, you know, we could talk about verbal agreements and the legalities, even though they're legally binding, you can't prove what was said. So it's always worth, whatever you do, just make sure it's in writing. You need to send an email. If you're booking a gig, make sure you know exactly what time you're getting in, if there's any kind of money you've got to pay for put merch out, any money you've got to pay for the sound guy or PA person, and what you're getting paid. And very often the promoter, because, you know, looking on the other side of it, musicians can be a little bit disingenuous as well and promise the earth, oh, we'll bring 50 people in, no problem. But there's no point saying that unless you can bring 50 people in, because you're going to let yourselves down, you're going to let the club down, and the punters that are there. You kind of got to look at it from both sides. So the answer to that is to make sure that you talk with whoever's putting you on, whether it's the club or the promoter or the manager, whatever, and make sure that you both understand exactly what is expected, how you're going to get paid, and if you're going to get paid. And the only rate that the MU don't have that is set in stone is the live music rate. We've got suggested rates, but clearly they can't be applied because every single venue, different size, every promoter works differently. The way that things are done best now, from all the stuff I see from the MU, is where promoters and musicians work jointly. They both know what they're doing. They both utilise all the social networking sites to the maximum, so that as many people as possible know that they're going to be playing. Simple as that.
I mean, Emma, from a promoter's point of view, being someone on the other side of the fence, I mean, how do you choose? I mean, obviously the talent of the band and the music, but are there particular things that you look for that some of these guys who may be in bands or manage bands or work with bands can do, put themselves in the best light to approach you as an established promoter to get that gig?
Well, I always look for professional bands. It's not just about the likes on Facebook or the people talking about that band. Well, that's quite a tempting thing if there's a lot of people talking about that particular band, there's hopefully those people will be talking about, oh look, they're going to play at the O2 Academy in Birmingham. Oh, we've got to go to that. So that's very helpful. Music's always important because I don't really mess my genres up. I don't have a folk band next to a metal band, or oh, that rock band will bring 50 people. Oh, let's put them on that indie night. I don't mess around like that. I try and put a proper gig on. So I do want people to bring people, really, because the venues are not free. I think it's great when venues are free and actually give promoters a cut of the bar. I've never ever had that myself because I hang around with the O2 Academy too much. But the venues are quite expensive, and I like to say that I can pay off the higher charge at every gig, but I can't, not at every gig. But yeah, it's about the right attitude. It's about bands getting behind the gigs as well, because I certainly am doing my best. And it really is quite hard work. As I said, my radio show doesn't give me any trouble. I do that 6 days a week. Doesn't give me any grief. The things that give me grief are the gigs and dealing with bands on a daily basis. Just replying to emails and things like that, just being professional. And Paul saying it is the music business, and you have to run your band as a business. And if you've got a gig, you really do have to promote it as well as the promoters, because we need to pay people at the end of the night, and sometimes we're running to the cash machine for our £200 just to pay someone, or we're doing midnight transfers via Lloyd's TSB. Bloody hell, I've got to pay them there 50 quid, what's going on? So yeah, it can be hard, and I think bands need to realise that venues aren't free, and not all of them anyway, some of them are, but the two that I work with unfortunately are not, and I don't get a cut of the bar, and I don't even get a free drink. So yeah, we need bands to get behind the gigs as well as ourselves, and promoters do. Most promoters do.
And do the right kinds of gigs, because I think the whole sort of what I would call circuit venues, the sort of pay-to-play venues that you all know what they are, they're a form of redistribution of wealth. And I'm all for it in society in general, but it shouldn't be that you redistribute your mate's wealth into the promoter's pocket. That's bad. That's not a good idea. I wouldn't play those sort of venues. The kind of, with our bands, we try to put them in, a busy bus stop is a better gig than an empty barfly. 100%. You're there to make new friends, so play where the people are at. And if they are at the local pub, getting pissed, and if you entertain them for the night, it's much better. Press the flesh. It's much better. You'll make fans. So don't look for the cool gigs. Look for the cool people.
It's actually worth, it's a very good point, because if you don't live in London, you want to play in London. Everybody that's like the Mecca, And every single kind of town you live in Britain, you think that it's probably the worst place to come from. Certainly when I go around Britain, that's generally the place, if only we lived in so-and-so. But it's the same everywhere. And nowadays, the playing field has been far more level because of the internet. But London is probably the worst place to play. I think that it's kind of pretty much common knowledge that if you can build up interest locally, if you are playing live, if you're writing music, not for live performance, that's different. But if you want to get noticed by playing live, it's really about trying to establish yourself locally and find similar bands, and that's how the whole kind of punk thing started, and the two-tone movement and the new romantic thing. It was like-minded bands getting together and creating something themselves, because there wasn't any outlet for what they wanted to do. They did it themselves, and it's really no different today.
And I think if you have some modicum of success actually doing that, building your local scene with other bands, then certainly even back in my day when I was a pretty crap gigging bassist in a new wave band, we would contact similar bands in other cities, in other towns, and do good old-fashioned gig swaps. So, we were based in Hull in the northeast, and we would...
And that is the worst place to come from.
And that, yeah. So getting anyone to come and play in Hull was a bloody triumph. But I mean, we would have a local crowd there who we knew would come and support us if we didn't play too often. And we'd bring a band in from Leicester or Lincoln or Sheffield. And so they could build up some new fans, assuming they were okay and played and did the business. And then maybe the following month, we'd go over to Leicester and we'd support them, and they'd have their home fans there as well. I mean, it's basic. Maybe a lot of you guys are doing that already. But I really think it's something that, as the guys say, start with your local scene and then look and maybe just pick a second place. If you're a metal band and you've got a good scene in Exeter, then look at maybe contact some metal bands in Bristol. Don't push it too far, because you don't want to be travelling to Stirling for 30 quid. But try and gig swap with someone in Bristol, or someone go further down the southwest, and then swap round that way. I wonder whether something else that we might touch on, I think someone mentioned earlier, is also maximising the benefit of a gig with merchandise. I mean, it's something that I think Paul touched on earlier. When you do play a gig, don't just think it's about that 30-minute set and those 8 songs and one if we happen to get an encore and the sound engineer hasn't pulled the plug on us already. But think about maximising the revenue you can actually get from that gig. And even in small numbers, don't spend a fortune getting 2,000 T-shirts printed when in reality you'd be lucky if 40 or 50 people turn up. But even on small runs, that, okay, a small run, they're not going to cost £1, they might cost you £5, but if you sell them for a tenner and they're a decent design, remember, not only you're doubling your money, so that might make the difference between a gig that actually pays for itself or puts you a little bit in the bank for profit. But of course, every time someone is out there wearing your band name on their T-shirt, they're a walking billboard for you. So if you can get some cool T-shirts done, or some hoodies, or even some pin badges. In our day, we all loved the pin badges from the punk bands. But I see, you guys, the young guys out there now, still, they're all having pin badges on their jackets, on their back. Something that people will get used to seeing your name and think, oh yeah, we've heard of them. Yeah, maybe, yeah, it's only £4. Yeah, let's go in and see them. So I would say maximise both in terms of profile and coverage, but also hard cash. If someone like Emma does give you a gig, don't just think, oh, that's great, that's a few quid to put in the petrol tank. Look at other ways. If you've made a decent CD and you've decided to sell it yourself, then make sure you've got someone there selling those CDs.
Or better still, be there to sign it yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I've got a good example of that, actually. By the way, there's a website called DigiJam. They're based in Cardiff, and you don't have to spend money printing T-shirts up. You can send them your logo, and they'll print them up for you on demand. So that means if you're out doing a gig, or you've got your own website, and you want to sell T-shirts, you haven't got to shell out 300, 400, 500 quid. Do a deal with DigiJam. I think they take 50%, 40, 50%. But it means you don't have any stock if you're starting off. And they buy it, you can put a link on your website or whatever, link the DigiJam website, and they do it all for you. Some years ago, there was, I was working a thing called New Deal, which is like a musician's thing by the government. And exactly that, there was a band that were on this scheme from the valleys in Wales. And I can't think of their name now, but they had a great name for the time. Spirit of Ecstasy, I think they were called. And they had a great logo, fantastic T-shirt. And they played in a barfly in Cardiff, and they'd given a T-shirt to the guy that did the sound and one of the barmaids. And a couple months later, Markus Reuter, who was then managing Oasis, came into this venue to see a band, nothing to do with this band, Spirit of Ecstasy, if that's what they were called, I think it was. But the barmaid was wearing a T-shirt. And he cut this T-shirt, and he said, oh, great name for a band. Have they played there? So she said, yeah. How many people they bring in? Oh, like 30 people, they're fantastic. Went home, Googled the band, sent him an email, they sent him a CD, and he started working with them. And that's the power of, kind of just one T-shirt. It's not about, it's not necessarily that difficult. I
mean, one of the things I mentioned there, I'm sort of coming back to one of the points I made, is in having CDs available. I wonder what, guys, whether you think in the digital age, whether physical product, whether it's CDs or vinyl, at a very indie level, whether it's with an indie label or even for the guys doing DIY releases, do you think physical product is still necessary or viable? Villa?
Oh yeah. You don't you couldn't sell it in the stores because you'd never get it into the stores, but it's good at gigs. I remember sitting at a AIM thingy, the Association of Independent Music. It's like an umbrella organization for indie labels, and to my right was the guy who was from Chrysalis, with like a zillion-pound organization, and he was saying that, we don't do any physical singles anymore. It's a waste of time. Here's little old me thinking, well, why do I even think about physical products? So you don't sell it at stores because there's no stores to sell it. But if you do a good show and you've got a CD and then you work the room and all 3, 4, 5 of you go and press the flesh and talk to people, you'll get rid of that stuff. And often, even if you sell it for 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever quid, that's your ticket home. This
is very true.
And that's what it's little things, and it's a memento from the gig. You're there to create an experience, and what better way to take the experience home than something to hold on to?
That was exactly the term I was
If you
gonna
can't go
use.
home with them,
It is a memento, and you have a captive audience, and I mean, I know, I work with a lot of artists who sell who aren't necessarily predominantly live artists, but still sell more physical product at gigs than they can online. Yeah. Even critically acclaimed artists who one would think are probably doing okay, but are struggling to shift, more than a few dozen CDs. At a gig, they can sell maybe 300, 400 CDs, depending on the venue and the nature of the show. Because you've got a captive audience, you've got people who are on high, they want a souvenir, they want to take something home. And if they can have a photograph of you signing it and standing with them that they can put on Facebook later, better still. That's the way to do it, and that's the way to ship. So I think there's very much a place for physical product. I mean, I have a slightly vested interest because, I produce I don't produce product, I produce music. And I'm someone that still believes in quality, and even though CD quality is not the best quality, it's certainly a hell of a lot better than MP3. I'm not anti-MP3, it's great for distributing and all the rest of it, but there is a move now back towards higher quality audio. Interestingly, people are now starting to, as a bonus disc or as a bonus download, actually produce high resolution 24-bit 96 kilohertz files.
That's cool.
Which, after all, that's how we're doing it. And it's soul destroying to actually make records at that quality level and then have to crunch them down to go in your phone. I'm not anti doing that, but as the main sort of source of listening, that's really soul destroying. So it's really good I can see there is a move back. But it's a small audience. But again, in terms of, aside from the gig selling issue, a lot of artists, particularly those artists who make records that are maybe slightly lavishly produced and very much studio records, are now producing deluxe versions. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about crowdfunding and this kind of thing, but this kind of ties into some of the other things we've talked about. But I think if you've got a tribe, if you've got an audience, even if it's just a couple of thousand people or less,
a couple of thousand is a hell of a lot.
Well, it is, yeah.
For most people in this room, that's a number
couple
that's
of dozen
incomprehensible.
But I think yes, there is still a place for it. I think it's become much more niche, rather like vinyl has. But vinyl is still, it's currently considered cool, and there's a lot of people that won't listen to music on anything else. And I think that CD is going in the same direction. It will become a specialist niche distribution playback format, and you have to make more of an effort because rather than just bunging it on a jewel case, people want nice packaging, nice booklet, but people are prepared to pay. Whereas I found a lot of people, the default setting might be they'll pay 7, 8 quid to download the digital version from Bandcamp. But if you offer them something special, maybe hand-signed, numbered, nice booklet, beautiful artwork, maybe a link to some high-resolution files as well, they'll pay like 3 times that if they're into the music.
Yeah, I mean, I read an interview just last week with one of the head guys at Norman Records, who some of you will know as a sort of an old school really distributor and reseller. And he was saying, yes, physical product is still important. That's really their business. They're not in the business of flogging MP3s. But he's saying as far as physical product is concerned, he was seeing a remarkable increase in sales in those who had bothered to hand endorse limited editions. So I don't just mean autographing, but maybe wrapping it differently. He said people who will put stuff in cloth finishes, and that's not a case of spending $5 per copy at some of the manufacturers, but actually doing it by hand. I mean, I've even done it myself. A Canadian artist I followed for some years recently did a limited run of 50, all in a hand-packaged envelope, each one with a tag inscribed. And yeah, I mean, I'd got the files on, on MP3, but I wanted to be one of those 50 who had that really nicely packaged CD, and that did make a difference. I mean, Emma, with your other hat on as a radio DJ, how do you guys at radio, do you expect or hope that certain things will be packaged in certain ways, or even whether you could give the guys an idea of whether you expect stuff still on a physical CD promo or MP3? How does that work now?
It depends on the DJ. And I'm researching my next book now, and I'm pretty much emailing all of the specialist DJs in the country, and I'm asking that very question: how do you like to receive material? And a lot of them will say MP3, some of them will specify a type of WAV and bit and all of those, and I'm like, gone right over my head. Others will say, I love the CDs, and they like to open their jiffy bags in the morning, and they've got a big stack of posts at the side of their desks. Every DJ is different. Some of the introducing shows, of course, you have to upload and create a profile before. Amazing Radio is a nationwide radio station for unsigned bands, and they ask you to upload. It's amazingtunes.com. They want you to upload your profile, and you can sell on there and everything. And if you get enough people buying on Amazing Tunes, they actually playlist you, and you're played throughout the day. So some of them are uploads, some of them are MP3s. And WAVs, some of them are good old-fashioned CDs, but it's the DJ's personal choice. And you usually, if you're going to try and get airplay on their show, it's best to touch base with them first and just say, oh, hi, I want to get on your podcast. How would you like me to send the material? And I'll say, oh, just send me an MP3, or if you want to send me a physical, you can. I don't mind. I'll take it however it comes. If the song's good enough, it'll go on. But yeah, it is best if you're going to start sending out to radio, ask the DJ first.
I mean, Villa, with your label hat on, how, if you can give the guys a nugget of advice as far as a label boss, pitching music to radio, promoting music, have you got a gem that you could share with them without giving away your trade secrets as how you help your artists have the best chance of getting some play on radio?
There's no secret, really.
Great song.
Great.
Yes.
Yeah, make a great song and a great record, and hope for best. It's true that the introducing shows have been really supported. Tom Robinson has pretty much played everything we've ever put out, and he's a tremendously excellent dude. But then, if you're looking, we would love to get our songs playlisted on shows and stuff like that, but it's just not going to happen, The Radio 1, we go to these meetings with Radio 1 and Radio 2 and all the rest of them. They all say, yes, we like supporting independent music, and we'll support it at 4:30 in the morning, for 30 seconds. And it's of course it's all bullshit. They play the same major label stuff and it's not a surprise, That's what, if the people who listen to Radio 1 didn't like what Radio 1 was playing, they wouldn't be listening to it. They like that stuff. I know it pains you to hear it, and it pains me to say it, but it's true. And you just got. It's about this sort of relationship thing, and building building relationships with people, and they take time. You don't just go to a radio station and say, here, play this. I mean, there's no context. No one knows who you are. Sure. So, and these things again goes back to the patience thing, that everyone look. X Factor and all those sort of shows. It's like everything happens so instantly in those shows. But that's not about the music. That's a television show. That's the television business. In the music business, relationships take longer to develop, and a lot of times people are really, really impatient. Like, you know, you make a song and then immediately you think that it should be played on the radio. Well, think again. That's all I'd say. And write some more songs and play some more gigs and keep feeding people information about your band and what you're doing. And that's how we do it. And we've had stuff playlisted on big national radio stations, and just the other day I got from Kerrang and Q, they requested a WAV file of one of our band singles, and they're going to put that on the list. And it's great. It feels really nice. I don't particularly think that it's that important. The main thing is that the band's out there playing and meeting people day in, day out, touring and playing those busy bus stops and other places where people congregate, because that's where your livelihood's going to be. Yeah, patience.
That's great advice, Villa. We're just about running over our allotted slot. Paul, can I just perhaps ask you in closing, with the experience that you've got, just if there's one further tip that you could give some of the guys out here as to how they might just find it that little bit easier. And I don't mean to make their life easier in that sense, because we know it's a bloody hard way to move forward and be successful. But if there's one further tip that you could offer on behalf of all of us, I'm just wondering whether...
Yeah, do what you love doing.
Yes.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
Can I just
don't try and be like anybody else, just do what you love doing.
Yeah, well, I think we're probably on agreement there, because I think it depends what your aims are. I mean, and I suspect, looking around this room, that most of the people in here are in here because they love music. If you want to be famous, then go on the X Factor or The Voice, you know, and you will be for 10 minutes.
Kill somebody.
But if you want to make music, if you actually want to, you know, make music that you will, you know, not be embarrassed by further down the line, then just do what you love and become the best that you can be, and don't expect to be famous and don't expect to be very successful either. And if either of those things happen, it's a bonus. But if you do some of the things we've talked about, you might be slightly more likely, but only slightly.
I'll just say, when I first joined my band, I was 15. I kind of left school to join them. And the first gig we did was supporting Old Ladies Bingo Session, this little kind of village hall in Rochford in Essex. Right. Yeah. And there was 30 of the old dears there, and we had, like, you know, the crappiest gear you can imagine. You know, it like hummed and buzzed and farted and crackled. And we kind of started
off... That's called dubstep, though, isn't
it? Well, it was called punk rock. And we just kind of started off playing our favourite songs really, really fast, because we thought that they were being played too slow. And that was back in like 1975, 76. And, you know, they all fled after about 30 seconds with their hands over their ears, you know, because it was such a racket. But we loved it. You know, there was no stage, it was just on the floor. It was fantastic noise we were making. And we had no kind of like expectations of getting signed or rich and famous or ripped off, you know, all these things which happened to us. We just loved what we did. And we just played anywhere. I mean, bus stops, you know, people's parties, the end of Southend Pier. We played to like lots of people. We played to nobody, but we still always put on a bloody good show because we loved playing, we loved doing it. And it was the same with The Damned. You know, all that stuff just came about because, you know, all of a sudden you didn't have to be in Yes or Genesis or Emerson, Lake and Palmer to make music. You know, you could pick a guitar up and knock out a couple of chords, and, you know, they're the same 3 or 4 chords that are still played today. You know, it's just different stuff over the top. It really is. And that was 40, 35 years ago. And I don't still do it as much now because I've completely buggered my ears up. But the attitude is the same. And if you love what you're doing and you do it for that reason, that is fantastic to do. You know, you've got a talent, so just do it, use it. If people like it and you get anything more than, you know, your mum and your girlfriend used to saying, oh, I really like that song, then I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, Paul, that's a fantastic way to finish. I wonder then, wonder if you guys would join me to thank Villa, Paul, Emma and Lee for coming and spending some time with you today. Just to remind you, for those of you not coming into the next session and hanging around further this afternoon, We're going to be up very shortly in Zone 3 on the first floor, so if there are questions or issues you want to come and discuss or just come and chew the fat for 10 minutes, then please drop by and see us up there. But otherwise, would you now please thank the panel with me?